Today, we're going to be determining who's actually leading your life and your career. It's going to be a little bit scary. We're going to see if you're being intentional or if you have fallen victim to the drift. Let's get into today's episode so we can stop the drift, live our values, and lead our lives. This is the Claim Your Day podcast. I'm your host, Nick Mazey. If you're tired of drifting and you're ready to start living intentionally according to your values, you're in the right place, my friend. We're here to help you lead with excellence at home, at work, and in your community so you can live with significance. Let's bridge the gap between who you are today and who you are called to be. Now is the time for you to claim your day. Hello, my friend. Today, once again, we're going to look at the calendar. Now, last week we talked about looking at the calendar and we're looking backwards, comparing it to our goals, to what we're actually doing. Well, today we're going to be looking at next week's calendar because our calendars, they share a lot. We have these goals, these aspirations, but when we get down to the calendar, that's what actually happens, or it's what actually happened. So looking at this next week, scan through your next week's calendar. Scan through those blocks. Is there any white space left? Or is it just solid? Back-to-back meetings, task after task, appointment after appointment. Maybe it's colorful. Maybe you color-coded it and you see a rainbow of stuff that just looks like a rainbow vomited all over your week. Well, if every single hour is already pre-allocated to other people's requests, fires, check-ins, then who's actually leading your life? Who's running your day? Look, I know this is challenging. It's not comfortable. It's tough. But operating a calendar without a shield for what's most important to you, it doesn't mean that you're an executive. It's more like you're a highly paid hostage. If you're spending 10 hours a day functioning as an optimized firefighter for other people's emergencies, then you've fallen victim to the drift because it's pulling you and causing you to only be in reaction mode. And what about at the end of the day? You're pulling into the driveway, you're just getting home. At the end of the day, it's been long, exhausting, and you have zero cognitive or emotional energy left for your spouse, your kids, or your personal vision for your life. Maybe your real purpose and calling. That's tough. It's tough me just even saying that. It's a challenge. And as we're looking back, as we're looking at what we want from our lives and we look at that actually calendar, what happens, a little bit of that reflection, a little bit of that check-in, see, that's what we got to do. And it might, I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it's the same thing that, I'm doing with this podcast. I mentioned in the last week's episode that the podcast is going to be going through some changes. Well, I started the Claim Your Day, and for those of y'all that have been around for a long time, before that I had a podcast, Enjoy Life podcast. That was some years ago, and did that a whole lot. But sometimes when things go on for a little while, you have to evaluate. Make sure that it's in line with the vision that you have going forward, and then make those tough changes. That's why, this podcast, the name's going to change to Life Leaders, because that's the community that I'm looking to build. This podcast is not just a podcast in isolation. We all want to stop the drift, live our values, and lead our lives. If that's you, you're in the right place. And I want this podcast to be more than just a podcast for you. That's why I need to pair it up with a community so that we can help each other to move forward in this. Because the drift, it will get us if we don't stay vigilant, if we don't evaluate where we're at and help each other out. So that's why I'm doing a little bit of a tactical shift. And it's really because I want to add more value without taking a lot more time. So the podcast, we're going to Life Leaders. That's going to be the name. And it's going to bi-weekly. That's every other week. Because that way it can be the same level of time commitment for you, and I can build in that community. So it's not so that for me in my life, it's going to be manageable, but also the same for you. So we can design this to help you to crawl out of a burnout or a drift, to be able to Once again, live those values and lead your life. So if you gotten stuck into that survival mode, see, survival, it's not a destination. Just getting by, just making it, that is the enemy called average seeping in right there. And the drift loves it. The drift loves it when you're in survival mode because you're not taking the time to step out, to have that higher level view, and to determine with intentionality where you want your life to go. But true significance requires building a life that is aligned with your values, and that requires intentionality. The drift can't survive when you're being intentional and living out your values. See, we are done with just surviving. We're not going to just be surviving that Tuesday afternoon anymore. We are designing a life. We're designing your future. And that vision that you have for your life, we're going to design that. Look, my friend, and if I'm talking about vision and all that stuff seems too far out because you've been stuck in the drift, you've just been surviving, all in reaction mode. First of all, don't worry. You are in the right place. Second of all, you can start from right where you're at right now. Sound good? Well, I hope it does, because I can get goosebumps just talking about this. So right now, we're going to put the stake in the ground and we are moving forward. We're moving past this just simple time management, and we're going to begin to be intentional about becoming architects for our lives. Sound good? I think it sounds wonderful. And that's why we're going to be developing the Life Leaders community along with this podcast. So that way you'll be able to access the podcast episodes and get into some of the action takeaways in the community. It's going to be right in line with the podcast episodes. Look, if you're looking to make some of these adjustments to stop the drift, then you've got to make it a priority. As John Maxwell talks about, he talks about the law of the priorities. See, activity is not just accomplishment. We can be being productive, but are we really making progress? And that's when we're talking about the calendar at the very beginning. You might see a stacked calendar, and at the end of the day, you're exhausted. So that must mean that you were accomplishing a lot. Well, no. That's why when you look at that calendar, unless you're really being intentional with that and you're designing that calendar for what is most aligned with your values, then that's not real accomplishment. I know I hate to be, I shouldn't say I hate to be that blunt or straightforward, because it's a good thing. At the same time, it's tough because all that activity, if it's not truly aligned with your values and what's most important for your life and the life you want to live, then it's the drift. It's somebody else pulling you along. Of course, you got to do a million things that are not what your most favorite things to do. But you know what? Honestly, living out my values, just doing what I need to do to honor my values, the things themselves are not always the things that I want to do. But I still get tremendous value out of it when I know that I'm honoring my values. So what are you going to do to truly prioritize what's most important to you? That way you're not stuck in this activity, but you can move to accomplishment. That way you're not just trying to be productive by stacking meetings back to back all day. Instead, you're truly making progress toward the vision that you have for your life. Look, running at 100 miles an hour means absolutely nothing if you're not going in the right direction. A lot of times we're prioritizing the calendar over the compass, and that is completely backwards. It is completely backwards. We need to be looking at the direction that we're going before we're starting to look about how fast we can get there. It's like climbing the corporate ladder and spending all this effort and years and energy just pounding away, climbing and climbing, only for years and decades down the road to realize that it was leaning against the wrong wall. It's like everything worthwhile is uphill all the way. You've heard me say that. But imagine climbing that mountain, climbing and climbing to get to the peak and realize that you're not in the place that you want to be. That's not the mountain you wanted to climb. That's the drift. That's where we have to get intentional and evaluate where we're going and make some of those tough choices. See, and that's where it's scary because oftentimes, especially in today's society, we wear this badge of honor of busyness. It's like busyness is this badge of honor If you talk to people, it comes through in how they speak. Like they act like it's a cross that they're bearing. Oh, I'm just so busy. I don't have any time of this, or I remember reaching out to somebody, and it was actually something I was doing for them, and it was for work. It was at work, and actually it was something that they were required by our supervisor to be a part of at the time. Um, and they responded with, "Well, look, check my calendar. I don't know if I have time." Like it was like they were so busy. They wanted me to know that they were too busy to do what was asked of them. So we people use this busyness as a badge of honor. But you know what it is? When we're busy, busy is frequently just a lazy cover up for a lack of clarity. Now that, my friend, that hits hard. I don't know if it hits you hard too, but think about that. Think of busyness being a cover up for a lack of clarity. We've got to work hard. Busyness and working hard they're not synonymous. See, we can be busy, but busyness is just going from one thing to the next without really getting crystal clear on what it is. But if you're only busy, if you're only in that busyness realm, that's the reactive, that's the productivity. That's not being proactive. That's not being productive. Look at this another analogy: efficiency versus effectiveness. So efficiency can be doing the things right. This is checking off the 37 administrative tasks. That hijacked to-do list. Efficiency is just boom, 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 getting a lot of stuff done. All right, but effectiveness is doing the right things. This is where we're stepping away from the calendar and time management and productivity, and we're going to take a step. Might be a scary step, but we're going to take a step into protecting our time for strategic decisions, for health, for family, for living out our values, for saying no to the drift, and leaning into our values compass. This is where it's tough, because people are going to tell you to be more efficient, to be more productive, to do time management, and you're going to push back and tell them that you're aiming for something higher. So here's the challenge. I want you to think about stopping to optimize everything, this optimization chaos, and start setting these unshakable standards for how you're going to live your life, for what gets on your calendar. See, we're not going to rise to the level of our goals. We're going to fall to the levels of our systems and our standards. And today, my friend, we're going to begin to raise our systems and our standards. Raise the level of the standard that you require for your life. Now, to do this, I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to subscribe. As I mentioned, we're going to be going through a change in the podcast name. And so with that, I don't want you to lose this, to get caught up in life coming your way, and all of a sudden it's a year later and you wondered what happened, and the Life Leaders podcast and community is going to be moving along, but I want you with us. So make sure you subscribe so you don't lose access to the show during this transition. And here in the next week, we're going to be going to a bi-weekly format. So if you don't see it for a week, then don't worry, it's coming back around. There's still one more episode, so I'll see you next week. And then we're going to be going to the bi-weekly format every other week, and you're going to see the name change to Life Leaders. Look, I want you to make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and you'll be able to get access to all the additional resources and the community and the contribution that we're going to be able to have, especially in the off weeks where it's every other week with the podcast. So we'll make sure we have those other resources and valuable things to contribute to your success, to stopping the drift in the community as well on the other weeks. So make sure you subscribe today. It's time for you to stop the drift, live your values, and lead your life, my friend. All right. You're going to be the life leader. Sound good? I think it sounds great. I'll talk to you again next week.